Hello guys and gals, and welcome to another episode of Unique Items. Today we're going to be going over the Dolmen Stone, which has seen some pretty crazy changes over the past couple of buffs, and the Boulder Druid's doing really good this season too. The Dolmen Stone is a unique that is hyper-specific. It is basically around the Druid, and it is also around the Boulder skill, so you're going to be using it for, obviously, the Boulder ability. The effects on this are 21 to 30% increased movement speed while Hurricane is active. You also get 16 to 25% nature magic cooldown reduction, which that's going to basically apply to anything that has the nature magic modifier on it. So you see Boulder has nature magic, Hurricane has nature magic, Rabies does not, right? So if it has the nature magic tag, it's going to apply that cooldown reduction to it, which is definitely going to be useful. We also have +3 to Raft skills, or +3 to 4. And Raft skills is this entire tree right here. So it also gives you bonuses to Hurricane, your bonuses to Boulder, your bonuses to Rabies, because that is also a Raft skill. So, no, incidental. You get +3 to Crushing Earth as well, which is a really nice passive. And that is the passive that gives you the Earth skills deal 5% increased damage to slowed, stunned, immobilized, or knocked back enemies. And of course, that's 5, 10, 15. So it's going to give you a nice little 15 times multiplier for basically any monster that's under crowd control effect. Now, boulders actually do knock back targets, so that's going to happen all the time. So that's going to be a permanent buff, except for against bosses, unless they're staggered. Then we have the meat and potatoes of this particular item. That's right, the meat and I like to say meat and potatoes. Meat and potatoes are good. Who doesn't like meat and potatoes? You guys don't like meat and potatoes? Anyway, speaking of big potatoes, we got big potatoes. See, we can throw big potatoes. Now, the special effect of this is casting a boulder while Hurricane is active causes the boulder to rotate around you instead. Boulder's damage is increased by up to 30% for each one currently rotating. And again, really nice. You may have up to 10 boulders active at any given time. Now, this requires that you do have Hurricane active, and I can actually activate Hurricane by casting Boulder, which is kind of funny. But we're going to have to actually put Hurricane on the bar, because that's going to make it easier for us. So let's just go ahead and take Hurricane and throw that on the bar. And a bibbity boppity boo, we have Hurricane. So when you normally cast Boulder, it looks like this. So it just rolls. That's it. It's got a cooldown on it, so it takes a particularly long time to get over there. Like when you have multiple. Now there is an aspect that you can use. It's called the aspect of metamorphic stone, and it's imprinted. A boulder is now a core skill and costs 40 spirit to cast, dealing 120% of its normal damage. So we throw those on, and what we're going to notice is that now we don't have a cooldown. Instead, we got a spirit cost. And so what we got to do is we're just going to use our Hurricane, and then we're going to spam boulders. And while spamming boulders with the Dolmen Stone active, instead of them just going in a straight line, they're going to spin around us in a circle, which is exactly what we want. And so we're just going to go like this. And now we've got spinning boulders around us. They look like turds, by the way. I don't know why they look so much like turds, but they do look like turds. They're very turd-like. And you can have 10 of these active at any given time, obviously, dishing out pretty massive amounts of damage. And there's just like, God, such a messy build. Look at all the mess I'm creating all over the place. It's so messy. There is some very interesting ways that you can potentially multiply the damage of this even further than you would normally. Now, there is an aspect, it's called the key passive, it's called Nature's Fury. And what it does is that casting an Earth skill has a 35% chance to trigger a free Storm skill of the same type. And casting a Storm skill has a 35% chance to cast a free Earth skill of the same type. Now, what you can do is you can use another skill to activate the boulders. And by doing this, you can cause them to get more damage, and I'm going to tell you how. So, in addition, anything that is free casted counts as both a Storm and an Earth skill at the same time. And this allows you to get some pretty good buffs. So for instance, if I leave it as a Wraith skill, I could say spam Rabies, which is pretty easy to spam, by the way, because it only has 11-second cooldown already, and it's actually really easy to get a very high, like attack speed essentially with rabies, because there's a couple aspects and various other things that allow you to spam rabies at a very prolific rate. Then as you're spamming rabies, you would be getting free boulders. Now, this would require Tempest Roar to turn rabies into a storm skill so that it could function with that, and you would also need Nature's Savagery to allow rabies to function as a storm skill under those conditions. Likewise, if you're using the aspect of Metamorphic Stone, which turns it into a core skill, you could be utilizing any of the abilities in here that could potentially be storm skills. You could run Shred, and you could use the Tempest Roar to convert Shred into a storm skill, and the same thing to allow it to spam essentially the earth skills. You could also use Tornado or even Lightning Storm to get the same effect. Now, let's use an example of this. So, I'm going to have to pull some points here. I'm going to just completely ruin my character. Why not? Alright, so we have now Tornado instead of Boulder. So what we're going to do is I'm going to take Tornado, put that on my main bar. I'm going to attack like this. We're going to use our Hurricane, and we're going to free cast this to try and get Nature's Fury to spam the boulders for us, which is what we're hoping. And we're failing miserably, aren't we? Do we have any? We still don't have any.
Mr. Goody Two Shoes, Mr. Goody Two Shoes. Ginger Evil Mentor here. Why bother farming when you can go to MMOEXP.com and simply purchase your items in gold? GGM would have you farm the items. What a pathetic being. Use code GEM Ginger Evil Mentor for 6% off your entire purchase. And don't tell Ginger Gaming Mentor that I was here.
Let's face this way so we can actually see whether the boulders are coming out or not. Yeah, well, we got the boulder, but unfortunately we didn't have the Hurricane active, which is a whole nother aspect of this. So another thing that you have to do is you have to work on trying to get your Hurricane active with 100% efficiency, and this usually utilizes things like, number one, the Endless Tempest, which increases the duration of your Hurricane, as well as Cataclysm. You can also use the new ring, the Majolnik ring, to get the Cataclysm active basically 100% of the time, so you can get a nice little damage multiplier as well. And using this particular build structure, you can potentially get a huge multiplier on these 10 boulders, but I am failing miserably here, aren't I? As you can see, it also casts Landslide as well as the other abilities. And now that I'm doing it in this direction, you can more easily see when I'm getting the creation of the additional bonuses. And the boulders that are spawned this way will actually spin around you as well, which is not terrible. There's a lot of ways that you can potentially do this. You can do this where it's still a cooldown, focus on getting the cooldown reduction and spamming something like Rabies. You can also spam the ability itself. You can convert it into a core skill, and instead of doing that, you can spam, say, like the Tornado ability, or you can spam Shred, which also works fairly well. There's a lot of various ways that you can potentially approach this. Another interesting aspect of approaching it from the Nature's Fury side of things is that because it counts as both an Earth and a Storm skill, things like Vasili's Prayer and Tempest Roar, which convert Storm skills into Werewolf skills or Earth skills into Werebear skills, can also come into play, because then you can have your Boulder skill being a Werebear skill and then scale it based on that. And then same thing vice versa, is that if you get the free cast of Boulder, then it becomes not only a Earth skill, it also becomes a Storm skill and a Werewolf skill, so it can definitely have some very interesting connotations on how the scaling can potentially work. My current build that I'm currently running is actually a form of this, and I know I've like completely destroyed the way that my character was functioning here, but let me go ahead and set him back up properly, because he's got so much craziness going on. But he basically was running around the idea of utilizing the double scaling, and he does this through the basic skills by having multiple basic skills running at the same time, and each one of the basic skills is then free casting the other basic skill and then going back and forth and getting some very amazing bonuses. He's also using the natural balance aspect, which also was really good for this, which is going to get you a huge critical strike and multiplier by switching back and forth between the two abilities. And you can pretty much get some amazing damage output through this by spamming multiple different abilities through the Nature's Savagery, or the Nature's Fury passive. As you can see, even when I'm casting Wind Shear, I'll still get my Earth Spike. And even when I'm casting Earth Spike, I'm still getting my Wind Shear and I'm still getting my Storm Strike. And this allows me to dish out a large amount of damage even in a straight line, because they're all AoE abilities, which are working very nicely together. And by going back and forth between them, I can multiply the damage even further. As you can see, I'm already getting, what, like 4 or 5 million? There was like a 15 and 18 million in there. Damage, like, just by doing my rotation. So you can see that Nature's Fury can definitely help a build like this by essentially getting the damage to go even higher by scaling through the multiple scalings. Now, you can still cast it directly. I'm not saying that you don't want to cast it directly, and maybe you probably do to get the ball rolling. But if you get the free casts are going to do more damage than the straight cast, which is also an interesting way to look at this. The flavor text on this is, as the hateful mob beat on his door, he gripped the pulsing shard tightly and screamed for calm. When he opened his eyes, all that greeted him was silence and the blood-smeared ruins of his cottage. Now, if you're looking to pick this item up, this item does come from a very specific place, and it's actually pretty easy to find. Dolmen Stones come from Duriel and Andariel, and when you farm these guys, or the twins, basically, they're actually brother and sister. When you farm either one of these, you're going to get a good chance to get a Dolmen Stone as a Druid. If you find them in the Tormented version, you can get probably some Greater Affixes on there, which would be really nice. And obviously, you would want the Greater Affixes on things like the Nature Magic cooldown if you want to use the cooldown version, or even the honestly the Wrath skills, so that you can get more points into the actual ability itself. It's very interesting how you can set up the Dolmen Stone build. There's so many different ways to approach it, and I've already seen some very powerful Dolmen Stone builds this season. So if you're interested in building one of these, it can definitely be an end game viable build. The only real complaint that I've had, a lot of people have told me about this build, and I've experienced myself, is the knockback on the Boulder skill itself, which is a little rough. The Boulder skill just has this knockback on it, which can sometimes make it very difficult for you to actually kill targets because they're always running away from you. It's probably good if you pair this up with some type of ability that could pull them in as well, so that you could kind of counter the knockback by pulling them in. An interesting choice for this might actually be Arida's Inexorable Will, which I think I just put it in my stash here a little while ago, but Arida's is a ring that allows you to pull enemies in when you're using your ultimate ability. And if you tie that together with the Majolnik ring, you could potentially have like infinite pull-ins to try and counter the infinite amount of knockbacks, which you may actually need. It's like pushing the monsters away and then immediately pulling them back and then immediately pushing them away. It probably looks really silly when you get it all set up, to be perfectly honest. Anyway, as always, I do appreciate you guys and gals joining my videos, even when we're just going over the Dolmen Stone. And as always, keep watching.